Hello again, everybody. This is Dr. Bryan Langlois, the Medical Director of the Pet Pantry of Lancaster County, as well as the immediate past president of the Pennsylvania Veterinary Medical Association. And I wanted to jump on quick and give a little bit of an update on things that have been going on in regards to COVID-19 and how it affects you and your pets, because there has been something that has come out in the last day or so. It's a paper of research results that came out of a research group in China that might have some people a little bit concerned or a little bit worried about how the COVID-19 virus works in some of their pets and transmission concerns and things like that. As you know, we've been on as veterinarians basically saying that, there really is no scientific evidence that points to your dog or your cat being a major source of infection or a source of transmission to you or other animals. There's been a little bit of a change in that in regards to some of this research that is now coming out. However, it's not really going to change what our recommendations are at this point. But I did want to get out there and get a little bit ahead of this because I don't want people starting to misinterpret some of the data that's been presented or see some headlines that might be a little skewed by the media in regards to exactly what this means. So we're going to go through and try to simplify everything that came out of this paper in China, and I'm going to try to break it down a little bit and just make it very easy to understand. So basically what we do now know is that some researchers in China, and we knew this was going to happen, we're going to start looking at animal models of COVID-19 to see if animals truly could become infected, because we were seeing some reports of it kind of anecdotally. The couple of dogs in Hong Kong, a cat in Belgium, I believe another cat in Asia somewhere, were all showing all of a sudden positive tests and potentially signs of infection, but they weren't really sure. So what these researchers did is they started to do things in a very controlled scientific setting of actually inoculating certain species of animals with the virus and then tracking them over a certain number of days and then seeing if they could find evidence of both virus particles as well as true infective intact viruses that actually could go out and infect another animal. That was one thing they looked at. The second thing that they looked at was whether an experimentally infected animal could actually infect or transmit the disease to a non-infected animal that was in close quarters. And they did this with ferrets, with dogs, and with cats, most notably. And we did find some interesting results in those, and I'll go over those in a second. The final thing that they did look at was they were looking at signs of kind of true infection versus just finding the virus present in the body somewhere using certain tests. And they did this by looking at certain antibody levels. And, just going back a quick bit in biology, if your body is infected to something that it truly is mounting an immune response to, then antibodies to that virus will start to be produced, and those can be measured in tests. It's a little bit of what they're trying to do on the human side now to determine people that have already been exposed and have built up a supposed immunity via antibody levels in kind of like simple tests that they can do just with a little pinprick of blood or a small blood sample. Don't think they're quite there on the human side yet, but they are looking at this in animals too, more so to see if animals actually mount an immune response. So here's kind of what they found. Looking at ferrets first, and I realize not a lot of people own ferrets, but some people do. Ferrets serve as a very interesting model for respiratory disease in humans because a lot of the biology and a lot of the receptors, a lot of the physiology is fairly similar, and they actually do use ferrets as a lot of models for testing vaccines and different drugs for respiratory ailments in humans. And so they did find that ferrets could, in fact, become infected with COVID-19. They share a lot of the same receptors in our respiratory tracts that humans do, so it was not a surprise that we found this. What was interesting was there were two of the ferrets in the study that did seem to actually start to show signs of infection, so clinical signs, some respiratory issues, things like that. But the conclusions are still a little iffy as to whether COVID-19 was 100% to blame for that or if other co-infection things were going on. I wouldn't read too much into that just yet. But what it did show was that actually ferrets will serve as a very nice model for looking at potential antiviral drugs and vaccines going forward. If you do have a ferret, and you are potentially concerned about that, it certainly is something to at least talk to your veterinarian about as far as, things that you can do to keep everybody safe. I'm going to focus a little bit more on cats and dogs because obviously that's what a majority of the pet owning public has. And in cats, what they did is sort of the same thing. They went ahead and what they call intranasally, or actually inducing through the nasal passages, a certain amount of virus. based on the virus isolates that they found from the source of the outbreak in Wuhan, China. And they went about and infected these cats, and then they followed them out for so many days, checking for certain things as far as evidence of viral replication, evidence of virus in various organs. Unfortunately, some of the cats were not the friendliest when they were trying to swab for certain samples, so they didn't do as much testing in the cats as they did in the dogs and the ferrets. But they were able to isolate a little bit of viral material in the feces of these cats after a certain number of days. We don't think that the feces is a transmissible route. We think this is just kind of the virus from the nose, a little bit might have been swallowed, and then it was passed through the GI tract. When they did look at the nasal areas and the respiratory areas of these cats, they did find evidence that these cats were infected with the virus. So virus was in there, virus was replicating, and there was intact or active virus particles, or infective virus particles, I guess I should say, that were then being released and that in theory could infect other organisms. They also did notice that the cats did mount an immune response to these virus infections, and so that shows that the cat was truly fighting off this virus a little bit, and it, could infect the cats. Again, this is not something that is totally surprising to us, because again, cats as well have the same type of respiratory receptors, the ACE receptors, that humans do, and that the virus uses to attach to before infecting the cell and then replicating. What was interesting in the study was that basically they had the infected cats that they experimentally infected set up next to cats that were not infected and found not to have virus, and they kind of set them up next to each other in cages to see if transmission could happen that way, and they did this with 3 non-infected cats. Of those 3, one of them did show signs of getting infected. So there definitely does appear to be, at least scientifically and experimentally, a way that cats can transmit COVID-19 to another cat. Again, this was a very, very small sample. This was done under very strict scientific settings, and sometimes what happens in the lab and what they look at in the lab does not always mirror real life. So this is where we don't want people to start getting anxious or nervous or start surrendering their cats, thinking that their cats are going to be a reservoir and cause massive illness in people. That is not what we're deducing from this. It's just an interesting finding, and more research needs to be done on it. In regards to the dogs, what they found is kind of what we suspected all along, was they did try to experimentally infect some of these dogs. They really couldn't get the dogs to show any demonstrable infective virus being produced. So dogs do appear to be a very, very low risk as far as being a reservoir or transmitting virus or being able to replicate the virus in a way to transmit it to other dogs. So those are the 3 main species that they looked at. They did look at some other farm animals, and none of those farm animals really showed any sign of infection, which is a good sign for those that work in the large animal realm. What I want to focus on for the last part of this, again, is specifically that cat area, because I realize that is going to start concerning a lot of people who own cats, who think that, if they've been exposed to an infected person, the cat may then all of a sudden serve as a reservoir to then expose you or expose other cats. Nobody's really coming to that conclusion yet. As I said, this is a very small study. It has not even been peer-reviewed yet, but I know it's going to get out there and hit some of the mainstream media sites, so I wanted to try to explain exactly what the science was showing before you hit that point. There is no need for you to really change anything you're doing as far as the recommendations that both the CDC and the American Veterinary Medical Association have come out with as far as being around these animals if you are positive. And that basically means that if you are found to be positive with COVID-19, really trying to let somebody else take care of your animals as you're dealing with the infection is the best way to go. It's best for your pet. It's also best for you, so that you can basically get healthy and focus on getting well and not have to worry about taking care of your animal. If that's not possible, basically we are asking again for you to practice good, normal, common sense hygiene measures. Washing your hands after feeding them, after taking them out, after cleaning up after them, especially in the litter box or things like that. Avoid them having kind of kiss or lick your face. All very common sense measures. Not sharing food with them is another one. And all of these can be found on the CDC or the AVMA websites. It's something, again, we're just talking common sense, and there is no need for anybody to worry about their cats serving as a major reservoir as far as cats infecting you with COVID-19. There is still no scientific evidence to show that that can happen, and even under this study, we basically are not changing any of our recommendations. There's more studies we are sure that are going to come out, and if that goes ahead and changes what we may be recommending as far as things go, we of course will be the first ones to get on here and tell you that. But again, I do not want anybody to panic panic. I don't want anybody who's a cat owner or pet owner to all of a sudden think they have to figure out what they're going to do with their cats if, they've been exposed or if they come down with COVID-19. There really is no need to change any of the things that we normally would recommend you do. You do not need to start surrendering your cats, and I want to be very specific about that. Do not think that surrendering your cat to a shelter is going to solve anything, because it's not. Just keeping your cats where they are will keep them nice and healthy, and everybody should get through this pandemic, cats and all, without any problems. And as we always say, of course, again, if there are any causes for concern, you definitely want to contact the one person that has the most accurate and up-to-date information, and that is your local veterinarian. So this is Dr. Bryan Langlois with the Pet Pantry of Lancaster County, as well as the Pennsylvania Veterinary Medical Association, reminding you that you may hear about this, but it is no cause to panic, no reason to get rid of your cat, and we, of course, will always be back to give you the most accurate and up-to-date information right here on the web.